Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our first Coalition for a Strong Nebraska webcam, our speed advocacy training. We're kicking it off this morning with Jeff Sheldon from Nebraska Appleseed. He's the communications director there. Before we get started with the webinar, I just want to point out a couple of items for you. On the right part of your screen in the bottom, you'll see a Q&A box. Go ahead and type any written comments or questions in that box for Jeff as he is doing his presentation. We'll find some natural breaks within that for us to stop and answer those questions. You should have your audio line muted, either using your phone button or by pressing *6. Pound 6. Star 5. If you have a verbal question, you'll see at the top of your screen where it says meeting, layout, pause, audio. There's a little person, and it looks like it's waving its hand. If you just want to select that, there's a drop down, and then you can hit raise hand, and we will be alerted that you have a verbal question. Okay? Let's get started with Make Your Point, learning how to use talking points in those action alerts that many coalition members send out. I would now like to introduce Jeff Sheldon with Nebraska Appleseed, who will lead us through this portion of the webinar. Jeff?
Well, thanks very much, Joe, and thanks to Cammie and March and everyone else at Coalition for a Strong Nebraska for letting me talk to you all today. And I suppose to answer the first question that I know everyone's wondering, the answer is yes, I am wearing 2 sweaters today because our office is so cold. I'm wearing both a regular sweater and then the back emergency sweater that I keep in my office. So that's going to hopefully keep me from coughing too much as we go through this presentation. So I'm not entirely sure sort of how familiar some of the folks on this call are on designing messaging for your organization. Some of you might be very familiar with it already. You do it all the time. Some of you might be newcomers to it because it's not something that you all have done as part of your organizations very much before. So this is sort of designed to hit the right notes for everyone, and of course, be happy to take questions throughout the presentation and again at the end. So if you have questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A box or to click the little hand raise button there so that we can make sure that this is appropriate for everyone. Oops, I guess I have to advance it by clicking down here. So the reason that we want to talk about communications is because we all work on issues that we feel are very important, and we're kind of the experts on them, but not everyone knows about the issues that we care about. And so the public has really little contact with a lot of the things on public agenda, whether it's child issues or poverty issues or healthcare issues or things that your organization has very specific expertise about. But if those things aren't being talked about, they're not going to rise to the top of many people's radars, and they're not going to influence policymakers and behavior. So the way that we rally our supporters and the way that we motivate people to care about issues dramatically is going to influence whether the public or the policymakers are going to address the issues in a legislative session or make it a priority that more people care about. So we're tasked with a couple different jobs. Not only do we have to tell people what issues to care about, but also how they need to care about them. And that takes some very deliberate communicating about the issues that we all feel are important. So some of the concepts I'd like to talk to us all about today is message discipline, which you hear in the news sometimes about. It's essentially saying the same thing over and over and over again and being disciplined by how you talk about messaging and talk about your issues. We're going to talk about effective framing, which is essentially just getting people to see an issue from your point of view. We're going to talk about thematic story, which moves beyond talking points and into how our issues affect real everyday people, which is ultimately how you're going to get people to care about these issues. And then values and positive messages. So you hear a lot of times about needing to fact people, give people all the facts about the issues you care about. And it's become something that I've become convinced of, that people aren't as rational as we'd like to believe. People don't make decisions with their head. They make decisions with their heart. So a lot of the messages that we want to build to move public opinion and convince people that they should feel the same way about issues that we do, those rely on values and positive messaging and not just bumper stickers full of facts. Some of you might be asking, well, what exactly is a frame? And the frame, what is a picture frame? What is a window frame? It's the way that we look out into the world and view something. So when we talk about framing in public opinion communicating, it's really just a set of internalized concepts that allow people to give meaning to the issues that we all care about. It's essentially finding a shared emotional language that we can use to talk to each other. And these frames don't just have to be with words you use, but it's by pictures, it's images, it's sounds, it's language. And these things have just as much, and if not more, of an impact on how people are going to make decisions than the facts that you use in your argument. Because if people disagree with the way that something is framed, if it doesn't match their values, then you could try to fact them to death all you want, and you're going to have a very hard time convincing them to agree with you. So we want to use, for an example, put this into practice a little bit, one of the issues that Coalition for a Strong Nebraska was working on over the past years, and that's payday lending. Some of you on the phone call might not know the first thing about payday lending. Some of you may have a lot of experience working on this issue, but it's something that the Coalition worked on last year, continues to work on this year as well, which is reforming predatory lending. And I want to show you two different examples of frames right here. Take a look at this headline by our friends at KMTV in Omaha. There was a bill introduced in the legislative session last year that talked about regulating predatory lending. And here's two different ways to frame how this bill, how you could talk about it. The first one right here, payday loan bill to help Nebraskans in debt. What does this tell you right away? If you never read anything else about the story and you didn't know anything else about the issue, it would tell you a couple things. This headline tells us that there is a problem that needs addressing. Nebraskans in debt are the ones who are being victimized, and this bill is an instrument of good to help these people. So if you take a look at the first couple paragraphs here, this story that I put on the screen, for those struggling to make ends meet, payday loans can sometimes be the only option for fast cash. However, that money can haunt you for a while, as many people can't seem to get out of the cycle from taking these loans out, and the skyrocketing interest rates to pay it back. This is framed as a problem within the payday lending industry, that these loans take advantage of people, they put people behind the eight ball financially, and that something needs to be done to address this problem. This is a very positive frame from the Coalition for a Strong Nebraska's point of view. This is how we would try to frame this issue as we talked about it publicly and with lawmakers. But let me show you another way this issue could be framed. Excuse me. The Journal Star story here, headline says, proposed restrictions would doom payday lending in Nebraska, comma, lenders say. So right away you can see that this is the framing that the payday lending industry wants to use, that this reform are restrictions that would put them out of business. And if you look at the first couple paragraphs of this story, whose frame are we looking at? We're looking at the payday lending industry's frame. Forget about a job killer, it would be an industry killer, said Brad Hill, president of the Nebraska Financial Service Association, a trade group of payday lenders. So the payday lenders say, if you try to regulate us, you're going to cut down our profit margins to the point that we can no longer offer these services and have to close our stores and lay people off. So their frame is it's a small business issue and it's an over-regulation issue. Two different ways to talk about the exact same thing. So let's look at them side by side right here. On the left, you have the payday lenders frame. Don't hurt my small business. This is a free market issue. We should protect small business owners from over-regulation, and payday lenders would tell you that they provide a valuable opportunity. They're some of the only ways that people who use them can get credit, which everyone needs. If you take a look at the right, you have more the Coalition's messaging and framing, protecting consumers from loan sharking. It's about equity and fairness and credit in the credit industry. We want to protect vulnerable people from being taken advantage of, and these protections are reasonable and common sense reforms that other states have used to not only allow the payday lending industry to continue to exist, but make them serve their customers in a way that is fair, that works for everyone. Same issue, but different values. As we're about to see, the values are really everything when you're talking about creating talking points and using effective messaging to drive your point home the way that you want it to. So no matter what your issue is, whether it's payday lending or whether it's healthcare or whether it is child health issues, a lot of these things are the same when you're building your message. If you leave here with nothing else, look at the first line of this. Keep it simple. I'm a very strong advocate of keeping things short and simple because talking points are not, they're not a debate. They're not college term papers. They're not high school term papers. You don't have to annotate everything. You don't have to over-explain yourself. and you don't have to have a 10-minute debate with someone about why you're right and why they're wrong. Keep it simple, because most of the time when you're distributing talking points, whether it's to your supporters, your members, your advocates, they already are predisposed to believe you. You just have to give them the reason to act and tell them what to do. And I work in an office that is largely full of attorneys who would like nothing more than to spend an hour arguing a point home. I don't think you need to do that. You can do it in 1 or 2 sentences and then give people the action to do and move it right along. That's because you speak from a position of authority. Your organizations are experts on these issues. You have some credibility. So use it and act like it. Speak authoritatively. Our talking points are not a high school term paper. We don't have to cram them full of statistics and long-winded arguments. And that gets me to the next point. An old saying that you hear sometimes in political advertising is that numbers numb and stories sell. Numbers are good to make points at times, but a lot of times they become abstractions. People don't necessarily wrap their minds around the difference between 1,000 and 10,000 and 100,000 and 10 million. At some point, they just become large numbers. So really what we need to do with our talking points is get to the human interest and the real personal stories of the people our issues are the people that are affected by our issues. And that's a much more effective way to argue your point than throwing a bunch of statistics at someone that can make their head spin. So we always want to lead with values, which are the internal concepts that we know that people agree with that can help us build a moral and reasonable message instead of just an analytical and fact-based one. So going back to our payday lending industry example, I wanted to show you how we need to build our message. First of all, let's identify a problem. Nebraska allows payday lenders to charge one of the country's highest interest rates. Note, we're not throwing around a bunch of numbers there. We're just telling you it is one of the highest in the country, which it is. It's around 460%. But that number doesn't mean a lot to anybody if they don't view it in context and they don't know other numbers to compare it to. We just tell them it's one of the highest interest rates in the country, and this predatory lending can trap vulnerable, hardworking people in a cycle of debt. How do you make these people who are taken advantage by payday lending relatable to everyone else? Well, you put everyone in the same boat. Take a look at that second point there. All hardworking Nebraskans need to be able to get a loan from time to time. Most people go to family members for a short-term loan, or a bank, or a credit union. Well, not everyone can do that. If they don't have the money, if they don't have a relationship with a bank, maybe they just need $150 to meet an electric bill. Not every bank's going to give you a loan for that. So this humanizes the issue to putting everyone in the same boat. Everyone's going to need credit from time to time, and these people can't get it. And so when Nebraskans with low incomes have nowhere else to turn for credit besides a payday lender, that doesn't mean these people should be allowed to be taken advantage of. Again, we want to drive home the human cost of this. Let's take a look at the next page. What should be done? Well, we think that Nebraska lawmakers must stop the debt trap and pass a proven reform that prevents predatory lending to make sure that everyone can have fair credit terms. What we're doing here is we're showing that reforms have happened in other states. This isn't something that's completely new and outside the box that Nebraska would have to embark on. Because we know anything about Nebraska, we never want to be the first to do anything. We don't want to be the last to do anything, but we certainly don't want to be the first to do anything. We want other states to go out there first and dip their toe in the water before we really step forward and do anything. So we show them examples of how that's happened. Neighboring states like Colorado recently have passed reforms that stop predatory lending, and that saves borrowers millions of dollars a year in unnecessary fees. And if you want to show someone that there's room to come to your side of this issue, you can always show them that the public already is on their side. So reining in predatory lenders is actually really popular. Public opinion of predatory lending and payday lenders is pretty low. A poll by AARP Nebraska shows that 77% of Nebraskans think payday lending rates should be capped, which is what we tried to argue last year in the legislature. So that's a little bit about how you create talking points, and you're going to use those in all kinds of ways. You're going to use those in advocacy updates to your members. You are going to use them if you go to the Capitol to talk to lawmakers, or go to City Hall and talk to City Council members. Anyone that you need to be on your side about an issue is who you can use those talking points with. So they're very versatile. But also, some of you may have experience pitching stories to the press or working with local news media. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit as well, just in case that there's some people on this call who this is new to, or who might be looking to expand their media presence a little bit. So I hear a lot of, like, how do we get attention around an issue? We just don't know how to start that public conversation. Nobody ever wants to cover anything that we do. And it's been my experience that you can really be amazed what you'll get in this state if you just ask politely. News organizations anymore are really stretched thin when it comes to resources and time, and you can make a reporter's job very, very easy by putting things together to make for a very simple story for them, and they're going to be super grateful if you are a resource for them, not only for story ideas, but to connect reporters with subjects that are affected by these issues. And, you know, one of the things that we've tried to do at Appleseed in the last couple of years is not only pitch stories, but try to be a resource to people who are affected by a lot of the issues that we work on. So that's why we're always trying to build relationships in the community so that when we get a call about a healthcare issue, a reporter will not only want to talk to us, but then they'll say, do you know of a family that's affected by this issue that we could talk to? And we always love to be able to be a resource in that vein as well. So when you pitch a story to the press of whatever issue you feel passionate about, not only can you explain to them why this matters in the grand scheme of things in the state, but you can also be a resource, whether that's an expert, you provide expertise that no other organization can, or you can be a connection to that source, that human story that really helps drive the point home to casual readers or viewers of our local press, where the conflict is. And conflict doesn't necessarily have to be, you know, person against person, even though that's what really drives a lot of our media today. Conflict can be someone overcoming an obstacle, facing some adversity, and they're the good guys in their own story. Press loves stories like that. And so if you can set up how a certain issue puts someone in difficult circumstances and you're trying to help them overcome those circumstances, then both your organization and the subject that you connect the press with become the good guys in that story. If you're trying to pitch a story to the TV media in Nebraska, make sure that there is some sort of visually appealing aspect to it. Think of visuals that you can tell the reporter about, whether that's coming to your office, doing an interview out in the community, some visual materials that you might have, just some things that can help the TV press fill out their story. And once again, if you take nothing else away, that last point is so important. Be brief. Many of you probably recognize the letters TLDR, too long, didn't read. Don't overwhelm someone with a ton of details when the story is very simple. The simpler the story is, the better it is. The simpler you can put a story, the more likely it is for someone to pick it up and run with it because they don't have to wrap their minds around it in 2 or 3 minutes to understand it. So the easiest way that we have found to do this is to put together a press release, which is really just a self-contained story. And it gives people, in the best case scenario, it gives media outlets a ready-made story to stick up on their website and run from your frame. And the next best thing would be if they called you up to talk about it so that you can get that story even more legs and connect them to even more resources. So if you've never written a press release before, it's really not that hard. You use the inverted pyramid style, which means the most important facts first, and the most important thing you want people to remember from that story first. You can include quotes, not only from your organization, but also from people in the community, expert storytellers, expert sources that can also be included in a press release. Again, be brief. I would say no more than 1 or 2 pages. I have seen organizations with the best of intentions who are very, very knowledgeable and do good work sort of undermine their own efforts by putting together a 3-page press release. Well, nobody's going to read that. You've got about 10 to 20 seconds to catch someone's attention, so I would say always, the shorter the better. And be sure to list a contact person at the top of the page. If you're the communications contact for your organization, I would recommend yourself, or your executive director, or someone just that's going to be holding the relationship between your organization and the news media. So we got through that in about 20 minutes, and I wanted to make sure we left room for questions. But is there any questions that you have right away that I could jump in and answer about anything from talking points to framing to even handling some relationships with the local news media? I'd be happy to take anyone's questions. Even if it's about my sweater, too. I can give you some good examples.
It's Mary.
Any questions? Jeff, I have one. A lot of times people get stuck thinking about how to start writing talking points when they see a blank piece of paper. How do you get started?
Well, there's nothing more terrifying for a writer than a blank screen or a blank piece of paper. So I totally understand where you're. I would say you start with, talking out loud and saying, why is this issue important? What's the most important thing I want someone to understand about it? And that can get you started in all kinds of ways. What that will reveal to you are the values of why you believe that it's important, why your organization believes it's important, and from that you can build off why other people should care about it as well. People, if people see that you're passionate about something and you really believe in it because you know it's the right thing and not because of it's a self-serving thing, then they're going to be much more likely to listen to you, believe you, and be motivated to take the action that you're asking them to take. So I would say, as simple as it sounds, is start at the beginning. If you're stuck, and I do this, when I write stories as well for our website or for a newspaper, I think, what is this story really about? What's the most important thing I want people to know? And usually once you establish that, everything else will come easier.
Other questions for Jeff?
And I see someone's asking about the slides as well. Yeah, Coalition for Strong Nebraska has all of the slides, and we'll be happy to provide them. Or if you want to connect individually after this webinar, they have my contact information, and I'd be happy to speak to anyone one-on-one or trade emails or take a look at anything as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Stephanie San Bruno also mentioned that she liked how you brought up the inverted pyramid. That's important for individuals to know.
And maybe I wasn't very clear on what that was. If you don't have a writing or journalism background, all that means is you write your paragraphs in order of importance. So you put the most important thing first, and the second most important thing second, and the third most important thing third, so that at some point, if your piece is shortened, then you still got the most important things out there first. Don't bury the lead, in other words.
Hi, Jeff. My name is Shelly, and I'm from Food Bank for the Heartland, and I have a question.
Sure.
My question is more about framing. I often worry about the way that we talk about people in poverty, and I spend a lot of time being concerned about the way that clients are painted in a lot of news stories and press releases. I feel like we talk for them sometimes, and it makes me a little bit uncomfortable. So how do you make sure that you're framing things in a way that doesn't exploit them or reinforce stereotypes?
Yeah, and that's a really good thing for everyone on this call to keep in mind, especially if you're working on issues of poverty, is, if people are confronted by a problem that seems unsolvable and you're removed from the actual people that it influences, it can be very easy for them to shut down. And at the same time, we are trying to empower the people on whose behalf we're advocating to be part of the story and be part of the solution. So I would say one of the things that we always try to keep in mind at Appleseed is we're not necessarily telling someone's story for them. We want to make them a part of telling their story as well, so that they can decide sort of on whose terms to tell it. So I would say, you're in contact with a lot of people at the food bank, every day who are helped by your services. I think having honest conversations with them about, what would they feel comfortable with, making them a part of telling their own story, and not just speaking on their behalf, but creating spaces for them to talk to people as well, is really important, so that it doesn't just end up where we're the ones doing all the talking on behalf of people, that they also have a role to play in telling their own story. And one of the other things as well is to make people part of the solutions to those problems. People rightly get indignant, if they're in poverty, if people are just telling them what to do and creating solutions for them, it's really strongly community-based. The best solutions are where, they're brought in on the front end and, their thoughts are taken and considered, and they help be part of the solution to some of these problems as well. And that's going to make them more likely to have a really strong relationship with you, so that, that makes for good communication as well. Did that answer your question, or was that helpful at all?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions for Jeff? Well, Jeff, I had another question that people may want to know. How do you take talking points that are shared broadly and put them in your own voice?
How do we take them and put them in our own voice?
Yeah, what suggestions do you have for nonprofit members who will receive those emails from Appleseed or other nonprofits that say, call your senator, tell them this? How do they put it in their own voice?
Well, yeah, everyone sort of has to speak with their own organizational values. So, some organizations out there might not find it most effective to communicate using the values that Appleseed uses, that they might be much more inclined to using different values. Understanding your audience is really, really important when it comes to creating values and framing and messaging. Like, what do your supporters believe? What motivates them? What values make them your supporters? So, not everything that's put out there is going to be in the right language, in the right voice. So I think you would take a look at, what the talking points that somebody sends out are trying to relate, and think, okay, how do we best put this in a frame that relates to our supporters and our audiences? What would motivate them? So, understanding your audience is very, very critical. And you can do that by, whether you have focus groups or surveys, or you just, from past experience what messages move your own audiences. Then, it's sort of just a matter of translation as well. And I know the Coalition for a Strong Nebraska is made up of organizations that largely share the same values, but no two organizations are different. And so, if we talk about something as a healthcare issue, maybe another organization is thinking about it as a children's issue or a public health issue or an economic issue. And so, all of these issues have lots of different values that you can use to talk about them with, and it's just finding the ones that specifically fit your organization.
Great, thank you. Any other questions for Jeff? We have a couple minutes left. Okay. Well, we would like to thank Jeff Shelton of Nebraska Appleseed for providing us with a great webinar session. Make your point. We will provide slides available to each of you after the webinar to refresh memory. We'd like to also make sure you all are aware of our next webinar in our series. I'll pull those up here. So we'll do this again next week, Tuesday, October 10th, and we'll be talking about community organizing for policy change. That will be with Bradley Christian Salas, the voting rights policy organizer. And then we hope to talk to you again next Tuesday. Same time, same channel. If you have any questions, please reach out to Cammie, myself, or to Marge at Strong Nebraska. Thank you all for joining us. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.